Hey guys, it's Ryan, and this week we're going to be running through Panoceanian's reinforcement group, Code Captial. This is a pretty classic unit breakdown where I'll talk about the stat block, how I use them / how I see them being used, and if it's worthwhile to use them. This is the first in a series of 3 where I'll look at Panoceanian today, Ariadna in 2 weeks, and Nomads in 2 weeks after that, assuming nothing else comes up. If that sounds like something that interests you, then please remember to like and subscribe for more, and if you want to see existing faction breakdowns for Caledonia, Cosmoflot or military orders, then they are linked in the card above. Now, let's begin. If you've seen my Discord profile, then you know I like the Blade Ops, and I think it's a pretty good profile. Plus the logo has a boomerang and a knife, which is very Aussie. Anyway, profile. BS13, Arm 2, BTS 3, which is nice when combined with the Min -3, Stealth and BS Attack Shock. It's a bit of an odd duck of a profile with reinforcement, as I think if it was in regular armies it would probably have Camouflage or Parachutist. However, they do also make me think of them as lesser bolts, as they look very similar, but have less PH, BTS and BS Attack Shock, rather than Marksmanship, which back in N3 was Marksmanship level 1. Unlike bolts though, it focuses on 2 very close range profiles, although with 1 wound and immunity shock. It is fragile, but it can still be useful. So the boarding shotgun profile is interesting in that it's cheap and it's a source of a template, metasism, AP and shock, which is a decent defensive or assault trooper, which can fork very nicely. Again, something out of cover and within 8 inches, that's BS19 with AP and shock, so you can harm a wide range of things from tags to light infantry, although be careful for returning templates. This profile is cheaper and counts as bolts for fireteam composition, so if you're trying for that pure 4-man, it will help. But the most interesting profile, which is equally close range, is the SMG engineer profile, which is very interesting as, outside of Salharema, most of Pano only really has availability 1 or 2 engineers, so dropping 1 or 2 of these in the midfield with a BS13 gizmo kit, D charges, and a burst 3 weapon with AP plus shock is really great for all those bulky heavy infantry that may get locked down and expensive tags and REMS we have with remote presence. This means we can drop in and just unfuck a situation pretty nicely with re-rolling engineer rolls or a burst 2 BS16 gizmo kit, which both can be really helpful. Fortunately, blades are wildcards and they count as bolts, so it's pretty easy to get a good bolt fire team with an engineer going, but he further improves their usefulness by having tactical awareness. So you can drop in 3 or 4 guys, tactical awareness, fix a tag, then go about shooting without touching your regular orders. I think for this alone, blades are going to see play for bolstering our high quality hackable units. Blockers are our next new unit for reinforcements and are less useful than blades, but a little cheaper. They're CC17, BS12, Whip 13, Arm 1 and BTS 3 with a Bio Visor, X Visor, Sensor and Ballistic Skill Attack plus 1 burst. It's also an odd set. They are cheap though as well, with the base profile being 16 points with an adhesive launcher, nanopulse or flash pulse, multi-pistol and para CCW -6. It's also got a hacker profile for 21 points, which is not bad to bring in and hack stuff through the Billetier or Pathfinder or existing repeaters, which can help soften up an approach. I think both profiles will have use in bolt teams as defensive fillers, cheap hackers or solo specialists to grab an objective while something big pushes up. This is all thanks to its access to a burst 3 template and a power rifle on the active turn, much like the Patcher, which I praised heavily in my Cosmoflot video. Although the base platform is very different. The burst 4 multi-pistol in a Harris is also going to help clear out some stuff at close ranges and into the mid-range thanks to that X Visor. This also enables him to throw his adhesive launcher out to 32 inches on zeros, and the same on his flashbulb plus 1 burst from his skill and not the fire team to 48 inches. Additionally, thanks to Sensor, his discovery attempts are Whip 19 before cover out to 48 inches, which can reveal a fair bit with some impunity. The blocker has a lot of ways to shape the field and reach out further than he seems to be able to, but be forewarned, you'll need a bigger gun to start doing gunfights. I think between him and the Pathfinder, a cheeky coordinated order could discover an entire midfield very quickly, which means something like a Billetier or Tag can clear out a previously safe piece. In short, the blocker's skills enable him to hunt or help root out midfield pieces with some caution. Both profiles are pretty much going to see play thanks to his cheap options and templates. Availability 2 on him would be killer. Agnes is our second Defiance character after Uma, and she's okay for being pretty cheap. She has an SMG, Nano Pulsar, 6 Sense, and is a specialist. All this for 14 points, which is not bad. Unfortunately, she doesn't link, so she's here for an order, push a button, and maybe templating something. She also has a REM driver profile, which is identical and very thematic, although I'm not sure it's worth the 7 points for like 3 points worth of stat increases, unless you really want to give ability to your BS13 or a Pathfinder BS12, which is not going to be worth it to me. I think it might have a use in NCA where you can buff a Garuza that may still be alive, but I'm really reaching here. Anyway, I think we'll see the 14-point version quite a lot to support our expensive pieces through order generation, templates, and button pushers to solve problems. Quinn is an oddly nice addition to our reinforcements, as he's not a bad dire foes unit with BS13, Whip 13, Arm 2, BTS 3, MSV 1, and the first of our 2 sources of that, in a much cheaper and worse source mind you, Forward Observer with Flash Pulse, Shock Marksman Rifle, and a Breaker Pistol +1 burst. This is some nice mid and close range options, which are much better with reinforcements and can deal nicely with min without spending as much as you might want to on a Bolt, who has a sniper, or an Aquila, who is 50 plus points. Either way, solo he's putting out 3 shots on +3 out to 24 inches, which is pretty solid, and being able to target something with BTS is great anti-Ariadna support. Finally, he is pure with bolts, so in theory you could hit BS14 with him and discover him +3, which could also help a lot with camo markers, but we do have pathfinders and blockers doing the same. I think in general we'll see him as a cheeky third member of a Harris to support an actual big shooter like Orcs or Bolt Spitfires. Shona joins us for reinforcements with some of the highest damaging melee in the game with CC23 Martial Arts 2, an explosive plus EP close combat weapon with damage 18. This has a good chance to flatten anything it touches that lacks total immunity, and even then, probably that too. She also dodges on 17s and has no wound incapacitation, so a little tankier but lacks shock immunity, so it's a bit worrying, but it's not too bad. With reinforcements, we get over Shona and a lot of Panoceanian's troops' weakness is that she doesn't have to fight her way out of the drop zone. With reinforcements, we can come in the midfield, spend a couple of orders, flatten a tag that honestly probably should have been pulled back, or maybe find a nice, fat, expensive Hate or something and kill it dead. It's very nice, very efficient. She's also a wild card for extra efficiency there, so she can follow the Bolt Spitfire up. Bolts are the core of our reinforcements and basically the only way to get any fire teams outside of the Squallow duo, and that's fine to be honest. They're great troopers, we all know them. BS13, Arm 2, BTS 6, Veteran and Marksmanship. They're N4 made classics. It was a great choice to bring them back, and when I saw they were in reinforcements, I was really worried they were going to be pared down to a hacker, shotgun, combi paramedic and a Spitfire, and that would be it. Nope, it turns out it's a straight port from NCA. We have a wide range of profiles for forming fire teams with combi rifles, boring shotguns with drop bears and the basic paramedic profile, all of which is fantastic. Then we get some more exotic ones like veteran hackers with BTS 6 with killer hacker devices and hacking devices, which are pricey but very likely to be worth it. We also get a nice chain of command version for classifieds and to stop loss of lieutenant, which is 28 points, so it's kind of expensive, but honestly not as bad when you're forming a fire team around it with tactical awareness and other big guns. The spicy profiles come in from the SWC guns. You're likely to harass the bolts, although not required, and with an effective BS16 you can drop a Bolt Spitfire with burst 5 and very good odds to start digging out tricky pieces from cover. Spitfires aren't going to be anti-armor, but will start to take on things under Arm 4 in cover very easily. The missile launcher bolt isn't probably going to be worth it because of range bans and low burst, but it might be niche, although we do have other anti-armor options. Finally though is our classic bolt sniper. Now we can't have a pure 5-man core, but a pure 4-man or impure 5-man is not impossible, but it is very tight. So you can take this, hang back in a Harris or solo, and just take on anything that has a bit of mysticism and not Arm 6 or above. Bolts give us options, but limited options since there are only fire team available, which is a shame, but that's not a mark against bolts, that's just something to consider. If you're taking a fire team, you're going to see a bolt. With access to mines, specialists, shooters and solid wildcards, with purity with Quins and Blade, you're going to have some really nice, very flexible options here. The Aquila Guard is another one I was concerned for, but they have ported this over unchanged, so my concerns are gone. Aquila Guards are pretty basic heavy infantry with CC 15, BS 15, Phys 14, Whip 13, Arm 4 and BTS 6 with shock immunity and multispectral visor level 3, which is just basically an orc in a fancy jacket and visor. I'm obviously talking around it deliberately, but the Aquila Guard is one of 3 Pano units called Guard units, not the skill but the moniker. What this means is they are a group of heavy infantry with tag level BS and a gimmick. This one's is multispectral visor level 3. This basically ignores camouflage by nullifying surprise attacks from camo and hidden deployment, as well as auto-passing discovery attempts. What this means is if you can get a bead on a camo marker, you can probably deal with it promptly. Profile wise, they're very much hunters with a HMG profile, or a linkable or unlinkable multi-marksman rifle profile with a specialist option. I think the linkable multi-marksman rifle is going to be the one that sees the most play here, since it's pretty self-sufficient, since you can deal with a lot of different problems thanks to AP, shock and DA. It can be escorted as well by all sorts of bolts. Although if you want to take the HMG and just doom guide it towards a drop zone, you've got enough BS and arm to honestly just eat the 0 and -3 range bands. If you stay in that 8 to 16 or your 0 range band, that's still 12 after cover, which is now your only really negative modifier besides aforementioned range. The Swiss maybe does this a little better, but you could still go hard, or you could use the multi-marksman rifle and be more defensive and take a button. This is a solid profile that counters Ariadna, smoke users, gun nuns and Greek demigods. Orcs are in our reinforcements, and unfortunately it's not as broad as the regular counterparts, but they're still pretty orky. What can I say? They're BTS 3 and Whip 12, but they're Pano, so they're Phys 14, 6-2, Arm 4 with BS 14. Absolute no thrills, but that is the natural on which you put your spice. The natural spice, I swear I must have been hungry as I wrote this, is the profiles. We don't get Varuna and the Svalharima profiles, but we still get the notable breadth of orc profiles with the boarding shotgun and marksman rifles with and without tin bots, which accent our hackers, a HMG which is a really nice, since in a Harris that's a lot of firepower to mop up anything still standing in laser turns. If a HMG was not enough and you really want a big gun, then you can take the Fuhrback, which is not a Karhu, but I mean, does it need to be when it's coming in halfway through the game and can just come in to flatten a tag? With the Fuhrback, if it's visible, it's likely to die. But this does raise a question that we need to answer, that is, with reinforcements, do we need more guns? Well, maybe. It makes mopping up easier, but it also makes breaking out easier, which is important since you have no real control on when your reinforcements will be coming in. It's nice to have that burst 4 or 5 gun in reserve, and bolts and orcs do that very well. If you need objective takers, you have the orc hacker, but a pathfinder and a blade ops will do it equally as well for cheaper. Orcs really fill the role of big gun or chunky specialist support piece. I think we'll see them every now and then, and to support bolt fire teams. Finally, it would be a big boon to the diversity of our reinforcements if we could use them to form heresies or duos, so we can move away from bolts for some roles. Swiss Guard are a surprise for lots of reasons. One is it's another guard, so high BS, high armor, super good heavy infantry. They're basically the same as the Aquila, but also they're polar opposite. He's Arm 5 and not MSV 3. Instead, they usually get hidden deployment, camo and mid-6. A proper heavy infantry Noctifer with that missile launcher profile. In reinforcements, he doesn't get the marker state, but he does get mid-6 and stealth, which is very nice. So right now, before profiles, we have a BS 15, mid-6, Arm 5, stealthy heavy infantry, dropping in the midfield to do some damage. So what are our profiles? Well, like the other big guns I feared for a paring down, and we sort of got it, but not really. No Swissel, but we got a hacker, a HMG, and something special. So hacker first, they're rocking a multi-rifle and a regular hacking device, which is a pretty decent specialist combo. Pano hacking strengths come from either being fairly cheap, prolific and basic, or 2 wounds and linkable with tin bots. The Swiss hacker doesn't get that linkability, but BTS 6 and 2 wounds and maybe a fireball from fairy dust with stealth, that's a pretty capable hacker. This plus dropping in the midfield, which means you can pick your battles with hacking, drop a spotlight or carbonite before you come in, burst 3 on 15s with shock or AP. If that was a spotlight, then that's 18s as well. The important bit here is that there are specialists that can do a lot of classifieds and can grab what you need to win. The HMG, however, is just a gun, and you can use it like the Aquila to push deep on your own to bully some stuff with that mid-6, because let's be honest, we're not seeing enough visors to counter it, so you can make really good thunder runs with this. Obviously, with this pure gun piece, you're going to want to avoid any form of visors, but you can use them to sneak around and attack non-visor pieces. To be honest, I think the Swiss HMG has a lot going for it, but I think we're more likely to see the Aquila, Bolt, or Orc SWC options just for their price, except for maybe the last profile. So you know that joke about some models with CC15 or worse having prominent CCWs on their model? Well, the Swiss Guards were the progenitors of this complaint, worsened by the fact that the lore states they are taught by Shona, that CC monster, to use their big fuck-off Zweihander. But as I said, the Swiss is CC15. Well, they heard this particular Pano gripe, and decided to fix that with a profile that is CC plus 6, Martial Arts level 1, an SMG, and a Pulsar with a Tin Bomb -3, and a DA CCW. Well, it's hilarious, and it punches as hard and nearly as often as most knights, and is a real close range threat with that large direct template weapon and an SMG for suppressive fire on a potential -12. This should be a fun profile. This should clear out other midfielders well enough, since none of them have really good visors or good enough ballistic skill to take on a Swiss Guard. Plus, he's arm 5 with 2 wounds. A chain rifle just is not going to hurt him. This is very much an assault piece that, while Shona does it maybe better for cheaper, this might be more fun and more aggressive. So if you're a Pano player, please let me know how this unit does for you. I reckon it will be a great laugh. So Pano is one of many reinforcement groups that will have a tag, and we get the Squallow Mark II, which is a pretty standard Pano tag with BS15, 3 structure, complement of multi-weapons, and good odd to repair it thanks to Gizmo Kit, Fizz equals 13, and Rem Press. It is pretty nice all round, and besides the Lizard, which is a main battle tank, the Squallow is probably one of the better tags, super heavy infantry, and dogs in reinforcements. So what profiles do we get on Pano's new mainline tag? Well, 3 profiles, each with some use, with the main thing being common and a big feature of the tag being its multi-pistols +1 burst, which essentially is a +3 out to 24 inches on all profiles. This should help ward off warbands who you can AR roll on 18s against impetuous troopers within 8 inches. So actual main guns, we get a multi-marksman rifle with damage 14 thanks to it being a tag. This is really meant to be the budget option, and to be honest, it may be worth it for the 5 points more than the Aquila multi-marksman rifle specialist. But this gains a wound, a lot of maneuverability and tactical awareness, and you can just bring 2 or 3 other models with this. Either way, you have enough to pop out a crab bot and gain an objective. Either as a gun or an impromptu specialist, it's arm 6 BS15 for 57 of your 100 points. The next 2 profiles are very similar but slightly different. For 65 points you can get an AP Spitfire with a grenade launcher, which is a nice combo that the Squallow has always had. Well, it was a multi-HMG, but still. This is your brick two-face loadout. You can chuck burst 4, AP damage 15 downrange, and then pepper them up with a grenade launcher to deal with some other things with spec firing, which with BS15 means you get 9s out to 24 inches to place a circular template that could be used to clear out mines, skirmishers, or, more importantly, repeaters. Hopefully, if nailing a Moran, all 3. This is pretty nice, and it can be done risk-free to you. You've only got 4 or maybe 5 orders for less than 50% odds to nail something, but it could be a tool used when needed. Finally is the NCO Spitfire, which is cheaper and I think more useful since you can get the lieutenant to make the reinforcements pool feel less tight and just more orders to kill things with the tag. I think honestly this might be taken more, especially in military orders thanks to the Knight Commander, but in general, since NCO is a great skill on a tag and at a good price point, I think this is the one that will see a lot of play. Billeteers are the same as always, but don't have to fight out the drop zone, which is always nice. Reinforcements lets them wildcard, which can be a great boon for your tag or bolt harass, in which you can take a hacker and engineer to support it. I think billeteers are interesting placed as more durable shooters than bolts, but less than orcs or Aquilas, but possibly better shooters than orcs thanks to the ability to be buffed and their mimeticism -6. The 2 options give you 2 very different roles for your billeteers. If you were to take the heavy shotgun, I would use it to guard a tag or a fire team, or jamming it far into the opponent's side of the board to start templating models without templates. Min-6 is a great boon if you can get under ARO range spans with that heavy shotgun. The Spitfire is probably the one we'll see in a fire team, and maybe given marksmanship if you've already got an evil hacker on the board. Agnes can also buff it with her Rem driver, but I don't think you want to shell out for that combo. We're tight on points and it's just not a big enough buff. To be honest, a Harris Link Spitfire with marksmanship and min -6 is going to be tough to deal with, and while you won't do much armor damage, you can take down light stuff. This specific profile is a really nice alternative to that Bolt Spitfire, as it's harder to hit and easier to repair, and in general I recommend you consider the bullet tier and what it can do for your lists. Basically, PAL bots are the same as normal, but only applicable to the Blade Engineer, which I feel like you're probably going to want to link so they can sit near attack or heavy infantry thanks to their fire teams. With wildcarding blades, I just really don't see a need for them. Final one for reinforcements is the Pathfinder, and as of writing, ITS 15 is here and Tachimoto is dead. This guy has always been a nice pocket piece and he can link, which really helps him. Pairing him with a blocker means you can get a big sensor error going and you can counter with camo and hidden deployment in the midfield really well. But I don't know if you should do that. This to me has always been a secondary soloist who can do objective while the big gun does another. It's also 1/3 of our units under 20 points, so it might just appear just to get another order in, and that's okay. A BS11 multi-rifle with a whip 13 flash pulse is nice to have, and if need be, it can move. Really, it's a nice toolbox unit and order generating troop that can expand your repeater net. I've always recommended Pathfinders and I still do. With all the reinforcements covered, I just wanted to comment on the general state of Panoceanian design space with reinforcements. I think in general, reinforcement solves the issues of Pano lockout or being stuck in the drop zone. We don't have smoke, so we always have to rely on contested dice rolls to fight out, and that can go wrong. Reinforcement mitigates this entirely and means that if we've lost a lot, we can stem the flow of losses with an orc in the midfield or a blocker sneaking up to steal an objective, which I may not have been able to do with my main section. I hope Corvus Belli keeps this in mind going forward for Panoceania, as more units starting out the drop zone could really be worth it for us, as we can rely less on those contested rolls. Not only to gripe about Pano's woes, I want to say that the reinforcements feel very Panoceanian. Bolts, orcs and a squallow are peak Pano and exemplify our move to quality over quantity, and it's clear our emphasis is on shooting our problems away then playing the mission. Most if not all our units either have multi-weapon, multiple ammo types being fired at once, or have skills that improve their shooting or ability to not get shot. This is Panoceanian's bread and butter, along with lots of visors, which we also see a few of. If we see this emphasised in our next faction update, alongside our adaptability through sheer industrial scale, then we could be a top table faction. So yeah, that was my video on the Panoceanian reinforcement group. I think we have some real winners here, and I want to get more games in. If you've liked what you've watched, remember to like and subscribe for more. There's even little fireworks now, they're neat as hell. And as always, thank you so much for watching.